Back here on the Sports Hub, presented by Van Ganaway Chevrolet. Kyle Copa alongside Cody Hills. Cody, we are going to be talking about something that's in the news lately is artificial turf against grass fields. Of course, we had a huge injury in the NFL to Aaron Rodgers, and then the NFL Players Association came out and said that all fields should be natural grass. I want to get your take on what's going on, because we have now 3 schools, including the Villages now, that have artificial turf surfaces in Lake and Sumter County. That's 3 out of 14. 1 year ago, it was only 1. Mount Dora Christian Academy was the only school with an artificial turf surface. So now we have 3. What are your thoughts on artificial turf, and do you think that it's a positive change for these schools to make, or do you think natural grass is more acceptable as far as high school sports go?
So I think the conversation is twofold, right? I think one, it's you look at it from a player standpoint, and then you look at it from an operations standpoint. Pick your poison. I guess we'll start with the operations standpoint. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper, right, financially. Just the cost of being able to maintain it compared to natural grass. So I can see the reason that a lot of schools would go towards that. But at the end of the day, what does it come back to? It comes back to player safety, right? We're in the business of kids. We're in the business of keeping our kids and our athletes healthy. So I think it matters how you look at it. For us and the way we feel down at the Villages, field turf was a great option. It has a very natural grass feel. It's a lot more forgiving. So when you start talking about concussions and head injuries, and statistics have shown through field turf studies, fewer head injuries coming from the field turf surface compared to natural grass. Of course, the buzzword, I think, is the knee injuries. And we've crunched the studies. We've looked at the numbers too. Our athletic training staff and our school administration's been on top of it. When we talked about we were going to look this up and chat about this and have a little bit of a debate today, I want to be a little bit more informed. So I looked up that NFLPA study too. I looked a little bit, and some of the anecdotal references that they use, they said, well, each stadium and each team needs to look at their own, right? One size doesn't fit all for quite. There's different types of field turf, different types of surfaces, and so. To me, I think you have to make that choice on an individual individual basis. Like I said, though, for us down at the Villages, we felt it's a good surface. We wouldn't do anything that we feel would, jeopardize our athletes or put them at a greater risk. Because I think that's what it does come back to. I think a lot is made about the cost of it and being more efficient. Certainly with watering and mowing, you don't have to do any of that. Mm-hmm. The drainage is a lot better. Certainly, we're not worried about mud and tearing up ankles and knees on a muddy Friday night anymore. But at the same time, it is about player safety, and so we've explored avenues that you probably wouldn't even think of. Most people wouldn't think of to make sure that we're looking at the right studies. I believe the company we use is out of the same one that did the University of Florida facilities. So certainly getting involved with people who know a lot more about it than we do, mm-hmm. and getting their take on it and getting their expertise, and ultimately we implemented the field turf, and I can tell you I think we're really happy of it. And we talked about Danny Biding earlier and his knee injury, and that wasn't on a turf field, that was on a grass field. So, but of course, it's so hard to pinpoint individual injuries because they're all so different, right? Mm-hmm. The circumstances, the mechanism, the physiology of a knee, and the physiological processes that happen during an injury. It's all a base-to-base basis, and so if the turf surface or the grass plays a role in that, I think you really have to look at it case by case.
Yeah, and you guys have a bunch of grass practice fields
sure.
as well. Yep. You have like 4 or 5 of them in the back, at
yep.
least 4, that you can practice on in the event that you're on grass anyways,
yep.
For the upcoming game that week. Whereas South Sumter also has a grass field that they can practice on, and then they have the artificial turf field, which they installed. Some of the points that you brought up are very good. It is a case-by-case basis. Sure. When you look at some of the injuries that have happened, I mean, J.K. Dobbins in the NFL, he gets injured, he blows his Achilles out. That's on natural grass. Nick Chubb, different set of circumstances,
sure. Yep.
but he has a knee injury, natural grass. Aaron Rodgers, turf. It's almost like a double-edged sword when you think about it.
It really is, and I think it's kind of an interesting thing, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about it. So when you told me we were going to chat about it, I was kind of excited because it is. It's we all know, I think when it came up with the head injuries and the concussions, when that sort of became the buzz thing 5, 7, 10 years ago, more light called to that, we quickly realized how much money is in football, in the game of football, especially at the professional level.
Yeah.
And so they want to protect those athletes and try to do the most they can. When you boil it down, though, you let it water on down to the collegiate level and down to the high school level. We're about the same thing, I think. I think at the end of the day, the money and the cost of it goes out the window. I wholeheartedly believe that if we felt that it would cause more harm to our athletes, we would get rid of it. But as you mentioned, we have the grass fields. If we're going to play a team that's going to play on grass, we're going to practice on grass that week. If we're going to play a home game or a team like South Sumter who has turf, we have a practice turf field and then we have our game turf field. So just to be able to have that option is nice. But like you said, it is an interesting conversation. It's one that needs to be had. But I do feel it's a case-by-case basis. I know at the Villages we felt very good and confident to have the field and the field turf. With the reps that we talked with them, we were confident in those conversations coming out of it. And so again, a case-by-case basis, like you said, and I think it's up to each school to make that decision. But it's worth talking about for sure.
And it really does feel like grass. When you step
Yes.
on it, it has a spongy feel to it. It's unlike when I've gone over to Mount Dora Christian Academy. They have a fine turf field as well, but it's a little, it's older, of course. It was put in around 2017, 18. It's got rubber infill.
Yep.
And so you guys have sort of a rubber infill, but it's more of a sand polymer based. Can you talk about that? It's a different type of, I haven't seen it before. It's almost like it's cutting edge.
Yeah, you mentioned that sponginess. That's the first thing I noticed when I stepped on it, is it almost feels like you're stepping onto a freshly watered lawn, like grass lawn. It has a little bit of a soft, wet feel to it, but obviously it's dry. But yeah, that base you're talking about, we've actually, trying to provide a little bit more for our athletes. And I know Coach Pettis is going to run me off the field for not knowing the particular name of this, but we have these cooling pebbles, this cool base. It's kind of a sand, and it helps keeps the temperature down. One of the things with field turf or the old artificial turf surfaces, the kind of the carpet turf, was how hot they would get. We kind of have this cooling layer on the top of our sandy, rubbery pellet type polymer, as you mentioned, kind of that synthetic material that we use as a soil, if you will, that kind of keeps things cool for our athletes. And so you don't see that steam rising up like you might necessarily elsewhere. So
It's 1,000 degrees.
Yeah, and of course heat in Florida is a big deal. And you get up in some of these northern schools with the field turf, they have heating coils underneath it to help for snow and ice. We don't need that here, obviously, but we do have the cooling aspect to it, and I know our athletes appreciate it.
Obviously, running out of time. We've got about 2.5, 3 minutes left. Fascinating subject, and we appreciate Cody's take on it, and really cool about the cooling aspect of that as well, because we've known that artificial turf surfaces in the direct sunlight, they can be 50, 60 degrees hotter than it's actually on the field. So really interesting stuff. Well, I wanted to really quickly